Welcome to a special discussion on how to differentiate your RIA offerings hosted by Docupace. We're certain today's call will be filled with unique insights and important takeaways. As we begin today's discussion, here are a few important items before we get started. Today's discussion is being recorded and a replay will be available on the Docupace website following today's call. All audience members have been muted and video turned off. If you would like to ask a question for one of our speakers, please use the Q&A button located on your Zoom screen. We'll also be polling the audience several times during the call today. We encourage each of you to participate in making this an engaging talk. To begin today's discussion, please welcome our host, Docupace Chief Marketing Officer, Ryan George. Ryan, the webinar is yours.
Thank you, Kristen. Always do such a wonderful job introducing us. And welcome to my friend Torie Happe, who's just across the Metroplex from us, from here in Dallas. We're coming to you from a very steamy North Texas this July warm day. So how are you today, Torie?
We are good. We're, like you said, we're trying to stay inside, stay cool. I think, 11 straight days of 100 we're at right now?
Something like that. And then no rain,
I try not to count.
No rain or cool in sight. So even the bugs have decided to come in. So today we're going to talk about RIAs and most importantly, talk about differentiation. I think one of the things that you and I have talked about a bunch, and I think sees a lot in the marketplace is, a lot of RIAs that are doing well, have a good client base, looking for points of differentiation and where they can separate themselves from the pack. So what we'll talk about is we have a number of different slides that we'll talk through and sort of ideas, and hopefully everybody will walk away from this this talk with maybe some ideas they can implement their firm, or maybe some what others have seen that they think that they can maybe replicate in their firm as well. So sort of to set the stage for today, I want to talk about sort of where we sit within the marketplace today. And let's start with wave one. So where we were before is sort of what I call the good old days. This is portfolio-based, product-based, where the RIA really sit as that sort of portfolio manager for the client. Today, I think through technology and through just a new generation of investors, we're much more in sort of where we are, this wave to the DIY investor that needs to really have that support from the professional advisor, but also looking forward, sort of the platform model. This is where you're seeing some of the larger RIAs and some of the ones that are really separating themselves from the pack are really embracing this sort of ecosystem-based sort of where they sit in the value chain. And it's not just about the specific like money management, but it's about all the different things and all the different services that they can provide. From a sort of how we got to this place, one of the things that I think is interesting is some massive changes happened in the pandemic. We all know this to be true, but one of the things that really stood out to me, and this is some data that I pulled from Schwab and some other sources, is if you look at sort of AUM per professional within an RIA, going back to pre-pandemic in 2019, it was roughly 99, 99. Now it's up to 112. So you're seeing, a significant jump just within those past few years. We'll get when the 2022 data is out, we'll get that updated as well. But even like the clients per professional, so adding 6 clients per professional within the last year, so it means that there's a lot more squeeze on the RIAs to really provide the values of service. Now, if you flip to the next data point, you really see how like that extended. So the annual hours per client service, jumps from pretty consistent base to 31 to 34 hours, which 3 hours times the 500 clients can be a lot, right? Same thing with annual first clients administration. You're seeing a jump in operations. So Torie, how does this resonate with some of the things that you've been seeing within the Holistiplan clients and sort of the conversation that you have?
Yeah, I think for us, we are constantly hearing clients, not that they're demanding more, but they're expecting more from their advisor. They're expecting them to not only talk about financial planning, but tax planning and estate planning and all of these other planning-esque items out there for them. We're hearing a lot in our business of fractional this and fractional that, right? So advisors, that you are being spread thin, that your clients are asking more and more of you, but you also want to make sure that they are getting the service that you want to provide to them. But how are you going to be doing that? So I think this new era of fractional CTO, fractional evangelist, that kind of thing. Like you're going to start hearing that more and more in our business because you, the advisor, are at the helm of it, but you need that back office support. You need that extra push to keep your clients happy and to make sure that they are getting everything they need. So I think that's been a huge change and a huge shift for us. We also know that many of your clients aren't living in the same space that you are. So now your business has, spread from one state to the other. You may not have been expecting it, but that was the evolution out of the pandemic, right? So a lot of people kind of moved, not necessarily out of state, but maybe just moved cities or whatever. But so now you, the advisor, are trying to figure out, how do I keep my business productive, but also keep my clients that have moved away happy as well. So I think there's this huge balance of productivity and client-facing services that you still have to provide.
Yeah, the proximity, I think, is a big thing because as people become more mobile, people wanted to get to a more rural place during the pandemic, or they wanted to get out of maybe the super big city and get, move back home to where family may be. Keeping that, they still want to keep those services. They can't keep their doctor the same way that they could, but they can keep the financial advisor. Looking at growth metrics, so that's pulling some statistics from, this is from last year's RIA benchmarking study from Schwab, and I think it's really funny. Funny as in interesting to see sort of where the growth rates are in terms of has not been coming from client base, right? So if you look to the far right, the CAGR is only 5%. The assets under management's 14%. That is, as we all know, it's really tied to the market appreciation and sort of driving assets up. Which I think why this conversation is important today is, okay, so if markets aren't going to be going up at the same rate that they were in the past, what is it that an RIA or an advisor can do in order to drive up revenue? And that's some things we'll talk about. Looking at the next slide. So this is from another study showing sort of, okay, look at all the services provided and sort of, let's say, value attributes from a firm. And you have the leaders who are growing at the faster rate than the others, and then the overall marketplace. And you see sort of expanding digital services. There's only a 7% gap there, right? So where the leaders and the laggards have a very narrow field. But if you look down at the bottom, what you just talked about, Torie, which happens to be something that both Holistiplan and Docupace and Precise FP and other core technologies are looking to provide, is the stuff behind the scenes. So like the 80% to 58% gap there means that there's a lot of opportunity for the pack to catch up to the leaders. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I am not surprised, to be real honest. I think the leaders in that category have found, they know that they know what their core is, they know what they're really, really good at. And then they have found technology and companies to backfill what they are not good at. And so being able to pinpoint out what your strengths and weaknesses are only going to put you in a better position to not only serve your clients, but to become part of that leader group, as it says on this slide. So not super surprised that the outsourced back office processing is where the huge gap is, because we've kind of seen it in the space where the advisors that are taking advantage of really looking at technology as a booster to their business and not necessarily like something that will, build out better, some people are real techie, right? So like they try to use everything, they try to use every single piece of technology. Trying to figure out which one is best for your book of business is going to put you in that better category, as opposed to just having 10 pieces of technology that don't do any good for you.
Yeah, earlier this year, I had a conversation with the RA. He was growing. They had a double-digit growth rate, and what was really interesting was they told me that they had, when they first looked under the hood, they had actually had subscriptions or licenses for 19 different technologies across the board, which that right itself sort of made my brain explode in terms of like, how could somebody actually be the owner of these things? How could they cover that level of technology within the firm? I mean, that would be the only thing you could spend your time doing, is trying to figure out how to make technology. I thought this slide was really interesting because this is from Deloitte, and it shows sort of where where are the 5 drivers? And what, as you'll see, it first popped up is we're asking the audience to sort of how much they agree with these 5 drivers. So we've got client experience, transforming technology, leveraging data, cybersecurity, risk mitigation, and enhance the workforce. Now, I'll start with the client experience because I think that's where a lot of people focus their, as you saw in the previous slide, sort of focusing their time and attention. Torie, what is one, like in your mind and in your experience, what is one way that you've seen that somebody really sort of can differentiate or set themselves apart in the client experience standpoint?
Yeah, I think in our industry, we're seeing a lot of shift to AI work, which is great. But I think too, like still staying in the wheelhouse of you are still making those personal touches. So I think it's really important that you still, reach out to your clients on birthdays and holidays and anniversaries. You, the advisor, know these things because you have that robust CRM built out for your firm. So, dropping a birthday card for a client, the wedding anniversary, sending them, a quick, gift for that, like constantly having those little reminders to your client really shows that you care, and really shows that you've taken them in as quote unquote family, right? So I think making sure that you have a personal touch still inside your business with your clients is really, really important. I also think as a client experience, make sure you're listening to your clients on how they want to communicate.
Wait,
What did you say something? Communication, yes. Listen to the way that your clients want to communicate. Not all clients want to communicate the same way. I also think it's really important that the way you communicate might not be the best way that your client wants to communicate. For the example, if my advisor calls me, I'm 99% sure I'm not going to answer it. I just don't answer calls, right? Text or email me. I know that word texting gets a little dicey in our industry, so please do it compliantly, but make sure you're communicating the way your client wants to communicate. So I think it's really important when you're taking those notes to your client on your first meeting in your CRM, make sure you write down, Torie Happe does not love a call, only call if it's an emergency, right? So you call, I know I better answer because something has gone sideways. But so I think those are the 2 big ones.
Yeah, that concept of matching, I think, is really important. Like if somebody's always emailing you, probably not the best to pick up the phone and call them, right? That might be their preferred choice. But it's also, I think, one of those good things when you're introducing a relationship with the client, sort of putting that in the CRM. Client likes phone calls versus client likes text or emails. I've also, one of the things that I thought was really interesting, I've heard people do before, is they find a way to bake cookies. So the smell of cookies is in the office and it is warming and sort of feels homey to people. I think having, knowing that somebody may go into an office, financial advisory office with some level of anxiety about their finances or about what they're about to learn, or even just because it's not their specialty, I think finding ways to make that a warm environment is important. Looking at the poll, I think was really interesting. Actually, you can share the results. Sort of, client experience is by far, 78% of all respondents chose client experience. And we talked about that some, but transforming technology, as 2 people who work for technology companies, one of the things that I think the industry misses is we often overpromise how much technology is going to change the game for everything, right? Though technology is just going to be everything, the bee's knees, but often it's not. And so trying to find those technologies that are key and crucial, looking at the technology is important. And then, leveraging data is a low piece. And I think part of from the responses, I think that's really important, but also something that it's one of those problems that maybe is so large, it's hard to get their head around. Like, how do I really effective data? People talk about data science and data magic, and I hear data webs and data lakes and all the sorts of data. I think the industry is a bit afraid of what that data is because they have so much of it. It's like, where do you start?
Yeah. And I think too, the later to cyber risk and enhanced workforce, again, that's that fractional outsourcing piece as an advisor you can think about. So the first 2, I think, are really, really important for you to keep in-house. Client experience is all about how you want to build your book of business and how you want your business to be portrayed to your client. And technology, you are going to be the best one to understand what pieces of technology are important for you and to how you're going to run your business. And I think, again, data can go either way, but 4 and 5 are that fractional piece, right? Yeah, they're important, but you don't need to necessarily worry about that. You can almost outsource those 2 items.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to cybersecurity, I would highly encourage hiring an expert to oversee
Yes,
that, just
please.
because that is such a moving target.
Yes, please.
So let's talk a little bit more sort of, we're both sort of come from operations camp. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of some polls and research we've seen on sort of what clients expect and what advisors deliver, right? So this is asking the question, sort of what client experiences so they want their advisor to be efficient, meaning automation, frictionless. They don't want to have to turn in, like Docupace lives in this world of what we call NIGO. So you don't want to have to sign paperwork more than once, right? Why would you even have to touch paperwork more than once? I think that's really important. So, every interaction, I think what we really hold dear here at Docupace is the importance of, once the advisor has prospected clients and had the introductory meeting and then had the planning conversation and is ready to implement or ready to open the account, that's a point of where the delivery of a crucial experience is really important. Because if the paperwork gets rejected, or you have to go back to get another check from the client, or what have you, or the mail gets returned, or whatever it may be, or if it takes a while to open the account and the market moves, all those things can lead to an erosion of trust that you've just spent, 6 months or 6 years or however long building up. I think smart is important. Sentient is a word that I think, touching on your AI point, I think is interesting. But I think what people are looking for is they want to make sure that the advice, not only the advice, the experience and sort of overall relationship is geared towards me, given to what you talked about, the concept of matching, and then trustworthy. I think one of those things that we all sort of take for granted, but it is critical, is they want to make sure that this person is, over communicating their knowledge, is they're over communicating what is most important. What do you think about these sort of key points, Torie?
Yeah, I think they're really important. Efficiency, I think too, especially with the wealth transfer that's going to be happening soon. That's going to be a huge piece for advisors to take into consideration. I think advisors, when you are going from parent to child, the child is more likely tech savvy. They want to make sure that they could do all this online. They don't necessarily want to come into the office. We know that the system is slightly broken when you're trying to open up accounts. I know I'm being like facetious when saying slightly broken. We know it's really broken. So, make sure you're communicating with the person that, we understand that the system is clunky, and tell them the steps that it's going to take, right? So they know that the pain point that client is going to go through. And I think, again, the trustworthy part is important. Human interaction is super important. They want to make sure that, you're real. I want to see what you're putting out online is the same person I'm meeting in office, right? So, sharing stories about your kids and your dogs and all of that just keeps building trust with your clients, and shows that you are actually human. We don't all have perfect days. I think at least once a week I post that my dog has eaten trash. So we all know, like, my dog Finn is a trash eater. So, connecting on different levels is really important. So I think these are really, really important for advisors to take note of. But if I had to pick, I think efficiency and trustworthy are the most important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Somebody in the audience, Nora, pointed out, which I think is a key point, is clients want to feel individualized and special. So, like, if they walk into your office and you've got 5 different accounts worth of paperwork on your desk, probably not going to make them feel the most special, because they're going to think, well, I'm just one of 5 meetings they have today. So, thinking about those things is sort of thinking outside of what maybe the normal box, I think, is important. Let's flip it and see, okay, so what kind of experience are advisors looking? So what do they think is important? So I think this is where advisors are saying, these are what our clients want from us, right? So they want it easier, faster, better, right? Who doesn't want something easier, faster, and better? That's sort of one of the most common things possible. They want to be able to guide and move together as one. So we know that. The smart part is that sort of ideas. And I think ideas are something interesting in given that's, I think, has changed recently, or at least the past 12 months or so, as markets become more choppy. I think it's interesting to see the importance of ideas coming. So like, for instance, interest rates, the Fed raised interest rates yesterday. That I think is important. And that, so that's never been a conversation in the past 10 years, as far as what the last, how to manage a portfolio or manage a financial plan with rising interest rates is different. And then the last one is trustworthiness. I think we talked about that. We just talked about that. So anything that stands out to you here, Torie?
I love this idea of engaging with your clients and prospects on a continuous basis. You were mentioning like interest rates, right? Hasn't been a conversation in the past because maybe they have been because we're like in the lowest they've been in a super long time. But that just knowing that you are on top of the market and you're constantly thinking about what your clients are going through. So maybe you have 5 or 6 clients that are in the market of buying or selling their home. You can quickly reach out to them and say, hey, again, notice that the rates are going up. Let's talk about that and how that looks into your financial plan for the next year or so. So again, you're taking the initiative. Your client is seeing you're taking the initiative and they feel important because, they remembered that I'm going to buy or sell a house this year and they thought this information was important. So I love that the engagement piece. I think engagement in our industry is really, really important. It is one thing that will still need human touch. So I don't think that, that's ever going to go away with all of the technology we build out, as much as we would love that. But that engagement and advice to your client, I think, is huge.
So, we talked about differentiation in client service. Let's talk a little bit about differentiation in terms of where selling a firm. So what actually drives value at the RIA level? So how do you maximize the valuation, whether you're looking to exit or just want to drive up the value of your business? There's some critical drivers that we've seen, and this one comes from an institutional investor study. So looking at the left side, so the ability to provide high quality digital experience is important and competitive. So 45% say I agree somewhat, 44% agree strongly. So let's just say the truth is out there in that one, right? So we got 9% basically saying that's important. The next one's RIA firms are likely to have increasing difficulty complying with regulatory pieces. Again, 90% or so is tied to it. Whether you see the biggest mix is an RIA's digital infrastructure is increasingly important. So you see, 26% disagree, 27% say maybe, and 50% say. So I think this is a point of difference in terms of a buyer. So Torie, reflect a little bit on sort of what you see there as far as, are people ignoring technology are they just focusing on that client experience and they not understanding the full value that technology can provide?
Yeah, I think it's like a slippery slope. I think there are many advisors in our space that take and build their tech stack really, really well. And then there's a segment of them that are still in the mindset that everything and anything I can do for my client, I can do it in an Excel spreadsheet. And they just haven't made that transition over because it's comfortable and it's not their normal workflow process, right? I think we all get into this routine of how we do our day to day, and by adding one little piece of technology may throw that person off. Now, mind you, it may be a piece that could really, really help them, but that idea of change just does not sit well with them. So I tend to agree that there are these steadfast advisors that are like, no, I'm absolutely fine running. My book of business has been running just fine for the past 15, 20 years off this Excel spreadsheet. And then there's those advisors that are like, we have really adapted to the technology and we have been able to do hyper growth with it. So I tend to agree with what's on the screen, only because we've got such different camps that advisors are sitting in.
Yeah, and that's, you're exactly right. I think, I think in just purely basic, think in terms of portability. If your client information isn't portable and isn't digital, it makes it less possible to put in the hands of somebody else, right? So I think that if somebody was to come and if you were to merge firms together or move it somewhere else, sort of let's look at priorities. So where are firms saying this is most important? This is where I need to spend my time. So the dark blue is people who listed high priority. The white is moderate priority, and then low priority. So maybe this is the answer to the question I just asked. If you look at the bottom of the chart, you know, preparing for a merger, acquisition, or sale is the back of somebody's mind. And I think that that just may be what's important to them, and that's fine. You know, I highlighted because of Docupace and what we do in terms of back office operations. You know, there's a mixed camp there in terms of where the back office is, and I think going back to the previous slide, a couple slides ago, talking about where that gap is. So, you know, where the leaders are and where the rest of the market is. I think, you know, if you're looking for a point of differentiation, I think operations really stands out strong. But is there anything that jumps out to you at this one, Torie?
I want to go down to the merger and acquisition one. I think, again, our industry as a whole, like, we all want to retire. We all want to, you know, play golf on a Tuesday and not feel guilty about it. So the 62% as a low priority is a little interesting to me. I know that, you know, many advisors feel like they could do this job forever, and they're not planning for that succession plan. So that's a little nerve-wracking, right? Like, what's going to happen to all those clients if you don't have a plan in place? So I think that one has stuck out most with me. And again, like you shown right there, the back office support is, like, it's interesting that it's so divided up in thirds. So that one's kind of weird to me too.
Yeah, it's the most even, which is interesting. So, so we'll ask the audience. So we've got an audience here asking sort of where the areas you can check as many as you like. You can check them all. Sort of what are areas of improvement for your firm and where you're focusing. And as the slides are coming in, you know, back office processes definitely is one of them. But you're seeing sort of really a good, I think, a good distribution. And so we'll talk about that as we're letting the poll stand up. I'll sort of switch to the next slide so we can keep the conversation going and bring in the poll once the poll's closed, give people some time to answer. So the question is, you know, okay, this goes back to the Schwab benchmarking study. So what am I looking at changing? Most of them is technology. You know, majority of that was the top bit of change. Operations, workflow, client acquisition model, nothing that truly stands out there. I think it's all stuff that we've covered. One of the things that I think is sort of, okay, so what's driving, this is from actually a 2-year ago study of, okay, so we talked about innovation. If you remember the first slide I showed where we are today, which is the DIY investor moving towards a more enterprise platform model. These are sort of the key drivers of what's actually driving innovation. What is actually forcing people to look at things different? And one of them is the growth of technology, right? So I want to sort of take a moment, and Torie, tell me about what Holistiplan is doing, and sort of, because I think you guys have driven a key change in how an advisor may look at the market. So I wanted to give you a minute to sort of talk about what sort of the key value proposition of Holistiplan.
Yeah, so what Holistiplan is meant for advisors to do is that bring in that tax planning piece for their financial plan. So what our platform allows you to do is take your client's tax return, upload it into our system, and within about 45 seconds, you're going to receive this tax report, and it's a breakdown of your client's tax return. Dollar for dollar, tells you exactly how the US government sees your client's money. So you're able to look at it in a perspective of, okay, what can we do to help facilitate a better outcome for our client? Or, you know, we have retirement coming up. How do we start planning for the tax seasons while you're in retirement? I think there's studies out there that are showing tax planning is increasingly becoming the #1 priority for clients in their retirement years. So having that conversation is almost going to be a requirement for you in the next few years with your clients. So we are able to help you facilitate that conversation and to break it down in terms that the client is going to understand. I know when I fill out my taxes, I just fill it out and hope that I don't have a giant bill at the end of it. And no one really wants to plan that way, right? So being able to plan.
The hope and pray plan.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Hope and pray, and hope that it's zero, but it never ends up being zero, right? So we are able to really help you, the advisor, help the client plan out a more efficient way to look at their tax planning. So again, it's that extra piece that you're going that extra mile for your client. And it's something that they kind of are coming to expect in, again, that client experience with you and your firm.
That's interesting. So actually, if you want to go ahead and share the results of the poll, one of the things that, so we've had, 40 or so responses, and some of the things that stand out to me, one is it looks like personnel, managing costs, even like client reporting is not something that's standing out to people as a desperate need. What's showing, at least in some of this data, was becoming more efficient, right? So I think people are looking at costs and saying, I don't need to spend less. I need to be more efficient with what I'm spending. And also, client communication and being able to build that client relationship. I think in terms of, you talked about wealth transfer, I think expanding the relationships where you can. So talking to both spouses in a relationship instead of just one, I think that's something that's going to be an easy differentiator. I know of a personal friend who worked with an advisor who literally would not speak to the spouse. Like when they were meeting together, all the questions would be addressed to him and not to her. And it ended up leaving the relationship because it would just, it was no longer useful for them, because one of the reasons they worked with the advisor was so the spouse could understand what was important to them and what important financial advice. So I think that's really a different approach of looking at taking a communication, sort of looking at operational efficiency. One of the things that this is, diving a little bit deeper into that slice, which is a slide from, Orium Wealth Management Study is all C-level wealth managers. It's a global C-level study. I think they had about 2,000 or so CEOs, managing partners, presidents of wealth management firms saying, okay, so for the next 4 years or 5 years, what's going to be increased? And you'll see the increase definitely is, taking manual processes and making them, or silo processes and making them automated. So think of something like rekeying information from one system to another. That's something that can be not only led to mistakes, but also is a drag on that efficiency and performance. Then also, what's the handoff between, client-facing activities to the person who's going to process the paperwork, whether that's your wealth management partner, your custodian, whoever that may be. What's the handoff on the back end in order to make those optimized? And I think that you'll see those are two big areas where people are focusing. And then the last one, sort of, where is the operational efficiency driving success? So the operation models are, I think the thing that stood out to me was they're dynamic, cost efficient, resilient, and compliant. Is that sort of how you see the world as well?
Yeah. And again, we are becoming a society that's so used to everything being at our fingertips and being able to get that information within seconds, right? So having that dynamic connection with your client, whether that's dropping emails and text messages, or they can see your LinkedIn post or whatever the case may be. Like, you don't necessarily think of that as dynamic, but it is, right? Because it's at the fingertip of your client. Cost effective wise, it doesn't cost you anything to put out a LinkedIn post or a social post, right? So always being on top of that kind of stuff. And again, I will probably have to sing compliance praises till the day I die. My husband is a compliance manager. So compliance for us is really important, and it's important for you as well. You, the advisor, make sure you're staying within the lane that you should be staying in. But know that you can still be creative. The compliance isn't there to hinder any creativity. They just want to make sure that you're following the rules. So I don't think that a lot of people think that, if you have to be compliant, it can't be creative. You can still be creative and being compliant at the same time.
Yeah, we recently had a blog article about compliance, and I thought the opening line was funny. It was something I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of, advisors don't wake up and say, I want to be uncompliant today. That's not the top of focus that they have, but it is something that is a daily task. In any activity you do, like you mentioned, texting clients, or where you're recording information of the client, and is that secure? Is that, to the cybersecurity risk, all of those things, like the compliance risk surrounds our businesses every day. And so we try to figure out ways that we can, think about third-party risk. You've heard a lot of the SEC and FINRA talk about, okay, so you decided to do business with a vendor that vendor has added risk to your business. What's, how do you arbitrage that? And I think that that's something that everybody needs to be mindful of. Last topic we'll cover today, and then we'll have some questions, is sort of onboarding. Now, you sort of tipped your hand a little bit earlier talking about how onboarding isn't very good. Well, it's not very good, and there's lots of reasons. Sort of where the area of investments are is digital customer onboarding. And I think what that means, I think sometimes is it's does the client ever have to touch a piece of paper, or can it be something that can be done quickly and satisfyingly? And I think we're still really in an area of our business where we're looking to make some improvements, and we've got a ways to go. Looking at sort of what problem, asking advisors, so what part of the onboarding process probably is the most ripe for being automated or being digitized? First one being authorization. So this is something like e-sign, an authorization, transferring funds from accounts. I think the sort of the being able to move money. I think money movement in general, I think among accounts can be better than confirming investment preferences and going down the line. Is any one of those that jump out to you, Torie?
I'm a big proponent of the transferring funds from outside accounts. That is probably the biggest pain point. And it's not just our industry. If you guys saw me at Future Proof last year, I was literally closing on my house while I was there. And we had done the entire process right before I had left. And I get a call, 11 a.m., we're supposed to close at 1, that they need one particular document and a $34 check. And it cannot be cash. It has to be a check. And I am in California and we're closing in Texas. So
it was a fun time.
There shouldn't have, yeah. So if you caught me screaming at the top of my lungs in the middle of that amazing event, that was why. But there's things that stuff like that should not be an issue. I should be able to digitally sign that form and pay $34 digitally. There's just no, who has a check? I'm sorry. I had to order checks, and I still have checks. I'll have checks for 30 years because I don't use them very often. So, and again, you've got clients that are leaving a job with a 401k, those accounts get left because they make it so difficult for them to transfer it, or you forget about it. So the transferring of funds, I think, is a big piece in our space that can lead to some really great disruption. And whoever figures that piece out is going to get all the business, because we know that is a major pain point for advisors and clients.
Yeah, even the aggregation of information, so that I think most people would want, think of your household balance sheet, right? So being able to log on and see, well, this is where our money is. This is what we owe on our house, and this is what it's worth, or this all those things. And I think those are important. I want to pull up the poll. We had sort of what our audience feel, how they feel their onboarding processes are. And we asked them sort of what's the level of satisfaction. So are they highly satisfied all the way to highly dissatisfied? And what's funny is that most of them are in the meh camp, which is it's okay, it's not terrible, but could they be improved? So I think that just shows that there's lots of room for improvement within this camp. So as we sort of turn towards the end of our program today, I want to ask the audience to, you can submit a question either through the chat or through the Q&A if you'd like. Torie and I will, those are on the bottom of your screen. But while you do so, I want to talk just quickly about giving one of the things. I'll do my quick pitch for Docupace, which is where we sit. So Docupace has a product called the RIA Productivity Suite. It's a product we delivered in December of last year and has been in the marketplace. And sort of this is what I call the magic wheel of what the RIA Productivity Suite can do. So if you're looking at profitability and performance and human capital, those sort of big buckets that will drive your firm forward. You want to improve the customer experience, which clearly all the data shows that that's important. And then being able to enhance the employee experience, which again is something that is important. You can look at all these things so you can optimize resources, you can cut costs, you can increase employee retention. And doing so is these are just we call the spider prong of what you can do within the Productivity Suite, which is digital back offices and simplify new account opening, organize your documents. We have a product called Precise IP that makes the intake of all that data and sucking it into different systems really critical, as well as compliance systems. And we have Compliance Tracker, which is the ability to deliver critical compliance documents in a safe and secure manner to a client. And what really is, this is one of my favorite slides, which is, okay, the RIA market is going through a change. Look at the different 4 areas that sort of 4 stakeholders that can benefit from using Docupace, and it's, you know, all of 4 of those things that, you know, I'll pause a moment and let people take a picture of that slide just to show how, you know, this is something that can benefit all areas of the business. And then lastly, showing sort of where it sits, because I think a lot of people say, okay, well, where does my technology stack and how does it sit together? So Docupace is the one that sits at the top with integrating with, we like to say, the CRM, the custodian and clearing firm, whether you're multi-custodial or single custodial, the platform TAMPs, as well as the financial planning tools. And if you want an example, here's a good example. So I take this as a typical tech stack. If you're using Redtail as your CRM, where Docupace sits, how it ties into Money Guide Pro. If you're using Money Guide Pro as your financial planner, how it can tie and bring in you know, risk profiling from you know, through Orion or through your custodian, and then DocuSign allows it to merge in together. So I think that's one of the things that I think you know, it's a good way to illustrate so people can back up and say, okay, so where am I supposed to be able to put this tech stack together? And so it really delivers about basically creating that single system that you can connect to systems like Holistiplan and connect to systems like you know, Asset Map or others in that. So with that, we'll see if we can get some questions from the audience, see if I could pull one up. So Torie, talking about sort of what are the, if I was to start a firm, like, you know, I had no technology, I'm an RIA, what would be the first technology you think you would look into make, like, what's the core pillar that you can then build from?
Oh, this will be my answer till the day I die. Your CRM is one of the most important pieces of technology that you are going to buy. So make sure that you are doing the due diligence on your CRM piece, because that is where all of your client data is going to live. All of your notes are going to live. That it is like the start and end of your daily life cycle and work. So CRM, I think, is #1 priority. And I know there's a ton of options out there for you to like go out and look at. So just keep in mind, like when you are starting to look at technology, I would, you know, bullet point what are 3 or 4 really important items in your company that you need to have like daily, and then make sure that those align with the technology that you're going to buy. So I know like there's so much. I think we've all seen that Kitsy's
the
map.
The
Yes.
map. Very, very busy map.
It's very, very busy, and there's so much for you, the advisor, to go through. So knowing what your top 3 or 4 items for your business are will really help you distinguish on that map who you need to like go out. But I think, you know, as a start, CRM is always going to be the most important.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel in really having some the ownership internally of who in your firm is really the standard bearer for the CRM, who is the you know, data governance, who's the one that's really driving the usage of that. Because like we try to tell, like even our own sales team or even customer people, if it's not you know, if the information isn't entered into the CRM, it doesn't exist, right? So like, because it can't be repeatable, it can't be findable. One of the things, so a question that came in, I'm paraphrasing the question, but I think it's a good question to think of is, if a firm feels like they're buried in technology, so let's back up and go the other way. If a firm feels like they're buried in technology, how do you go about assessing, okay, well, this is working and this is not? Like, are there any questions that you would ask?
Yeah, I would start looking at your usage, right? Like I think there's some advisors out there that start seeing shiny objects and start just collecting them, and they don't really use it very well. So I think designating a person on your team is really important to, you know, there's probably a person in your office that is really techie, that just really likes learning about different technology. Assign them to go through the technology, you know, get some meetings on the books with those technology companies, make sure you understand how the technology is used. And that person will then be able to come back to you and say, hey, look, this really, really fits our work lifestyle, or this one doesn't. So I think designating a person in your office to be like the technology guru is really important. And that person is able to go through all of those steps of vetting technology, A, that you already have, and B, that maybe you are thinking about adding into your company.
So I'm doing some interesting things on the fly. I'm going to make, somebody asked, Dan Garrett asked for a link to that fintech map. So it's in the Q&A or in the webinar chat. It's a great piece. Michael and team, I know Craig Iskowitz and even Mike Zabruska and our team helps build this out each month. And there's lots of moving pieces. I think finding those technologies. One of the other things, it looks like Mary Ann has a question. So I'm actually going to see if I can allow her to talk. So let's give this a shot. So allowing Mary Ann to talk. Mary Ann, if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask a question if you'd like. This is live production on the road, folks. Maybe she didn't have a question for us. So we'll go that. Well, I think we've covered everything. I think one of the things that another person has asked about integration. So if somebody wants to find what technologies integrate with Holistiplan, would they be able to find that on the website?
Yeah, so if you just go to holistiplan.com, there's the integrations kind of page that you're there, but our list is kind of short. So like I mentioned before, CRM is really important. I found a company that thinks CRMs are just as important. So currently right now, we only integrate with Redtail and Wealthbox. So going right into your CRM, if you use either one of those CRMs. So our integration list is much, much shorter than yours. So you guys have a very robust integration, but right now we're just sitting with the CRMs.
Yes, that's it. Like I said, CRM is a good place to start. I will put in the chat feed for our integrations as well, because it is something that I think we've spent quite a bit of time on here at Docupace to really get a good list of integrations. Just because I mentioned before, as you can see, on this slide, Docupace doesn't want to be everybody's technology. We want to be a piece, a critical piece of technology, and I think that that's an important part. And thank you, Kristen, for our team for being able to sharing those links. I do want to mention one piece of Precise IP that we had last week. We announced that we are part of the vendor affinity partnership with LPL, which happens to also be Holistiplan is as well. So we joined Holistiplan and a slew of other great fintech companies that are tied in with LPL. And if you, just giving a quick overview of Precise IP. So Precise IP was the 2021 winner for client onboarding solution, and actually was the finalist in 2022 for the Wealth Management Award. So we're really proud of that solution. We're proud of our new relationship and connection with LPL, and we're looking forward to spending time with friends at Holistiplan, our friends with LPL at the Focus event coming up here next week. And it looks like we have answered all the questions. So I want to invite everybody to visit Holistiplan. Give Torie a shout if you want to connect with her, or you can shoot an email to info. I believe it's info@holistiplan.com. Is that the correct email address, Torie?
Yep, that's correct.
Or if you want to reach out to myself, it's Ryan_George at Docupace, as well as communications.com. Our whole group manages that inbox. So I want to thank everybody for their time today. It been a great discussion. Torie, thank you for sharing your guidance and your expertise and your experience with this group. I know it's the audience has been very engaged throughout, so it's been a great time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.